In this video I'm going to show you how to make mini propagators for your seeds out of everyday household rubbish, and these are some pots that once contained some dips, and these are great to use because they're really easy to clean in between. So if you want to use them again for seeding once done, then just wash them in warm soapy water. Now today I'm going to be sowing some basil seeds, but I actually think this technique would work equally well for coriander, and I could see me actually potting some tomatoes and maybe some squash in here as well. The important thing is though, once the seeds start to appear, you do need to take the lid off, because otherwise there's a risk that they're going to get over damp, because you'll be surprised about how much condensation it will actually gather inside the top of this pot. So I'm using the compost that I created in my first video, which is a mix of compost, homemade compost from the heap, plus some spent compost from previous years, and this is a good starting medium for growing most seeds. Just put a little bit more in that one. So first things first, let's water them in. Now there's two reasons for this. Because I'm working with basil seeds and they're very small, I don't want to be putting lots of soil on top of them, because otherwise they are not going to germinate. So on that basis, what I want to do is create a nice firm layer of compost here. And then the idea is I'm going to put a very few basil seeds in each, because there should be a relatively high successful germination rate here, hopefully. And when I'm done, I'll just put a very small amount of compost on top, just a tiny amount. Even better if you had vermiculite to hand, but presuming that you don't, just a tiny sprinkling of compost will suffice. So I'm going to put 5 in each. I think that'll work out, or thereabouts. Problem is with these little dark seeds like this is you actually can't really see what you're doing, so it's a bit of blind luck as to where they go in the pot sometimes. Something like that, but this is the last of my basil seeds, so I might as well use them all up. Put a couple of extra in, presuming that some of them don't germinate, and there we go. And all I need to do now is just put a very small amount of compost on top. And it really is important that your compost is fine when you do this, because if you're putting big sticks, there's a little bit of a stick there, I don't want that. So if you're putting big sticks and all sorts of other things on it, then that's not really going to help, because it will block the light and you won't get such good germination. So anything that's a bit big, just crumble up or take out. And you can see I'm only putting a very small amount of compost on here. And just one last thing, just give it a gentle firming, and I do mean gentle, because what we don't want to do here is compact the soil, because if we do, it's going to make it harder for the seeds to emerge through the top layer, and also you end up with the water not going through as effectively when you actually do water. And all I need to do now is simply put the lids on and stick them on a warm sunny windowsill, and jobs are good. And like I said, you need to make sure that as they germinate, so when the first leaves come through, you'll get a double set of leaves with basil, that you take the lid off, because otherwise they're going to get too wet, because basil seedlings like to be moist but they don't want to be wet. And if you follow that advice, hopefully you'll have plenty of basil plants coming through in the next 2 to 3 weeks, possibly even earlier if the weather's warm and the sun is bright and high in the sky. These are basil seeds that I planted 5 days ago in my mini propagators, and it's taken a very short time for them to come up. Perhaps this is a new record, but then this has been an unusually warm April, so they've been on a south facing windowsill for all that time. And when I first had them on the windowsill, the lids were tightly in place, but as the moisture built up and it was dripping off the underside of the lid and the first seedling started to show, I actually moved the lid just slightly off to one side, so it's still working as a greenhouse, but the moisture could actually escape. And then as the seedlings actually started to show, as you can start to see them here, got about 12 come up now, I've completely removed the lid, and this is simply because if you were to keep the lid on at this stage, you would probably find that your seedlings, as they're coming through, because they're very vulnerable to rotting, would actually completely disappear. So if you follow this method, I reckon you'll end up with a really good crop of basil, or indeed a similar seed, providing they don't get too damp, so remember to remove the lid.